So the gradient trend is back. Well, I guess it never really left. The gradient trend has kind of been big for a while, but a new style of the gradient trend has been really popular recently, and that's these kind of like abstract, grainy, blurry gradient shapes. I actually went ahead and made a poster using this kind of trend. You can see this grainy gradient shape here, and we just needed a poster for the office, so I made one and printed it out, and it looks pretty great. So I'm gonna show you how I made that poster as well as how to make some of your own. Over in my Kittl project, you can see this is the already made poster. I thought that I would just show you the elements of the one that I made, and that I'm gonna make a completely new separate one, maybe even two in this video, so that we can get the hang of it together, just to show you how easy it is to do this. There's not really a lot going on here. I mean, this is 3 text blocks, all the same font. Well, they're different font weights. That's medium, and then this is like semi-bold because the text was smaller and I wanted it to not seem super thin, because as you make text smaller, the actual weight seems thinner because it is. Like, you make the font smaller, the lines become thinner. So I had to beef up the font down there just so it looked nice and balanced. The way that I achieved this shape is I actually used the Kittl AI to generate this, and I just typed in like grainy gradient shape on a white background and then removed it. And this was actually kind of a silly way to do it because we already have gradient shapes in the elements panel. If you go to abstract, they're in all right here. So I just took the liberty upon myself to go ahead and add a couple. I might add a few more to work with, and these are better than the ones that I used because I just removed the background, and so it has these hard edges on it. But if I was smart, I probably would have just seen if we already have elements like this in Kittl, and we do. And these are just gonna work so much better for the project because, you know, for example, if I drug this over, it has that blur and that feather edge that just really brings it to life and gives it that kind of 3D effect versus this feeling kind of flat. And so thus continues the trend of Graham creating things and then being like, I don't like that. You can also utilize the Kittl Copilot, which is still in beta, but let's say you added one of these to a project, you could click the Copilot. I don't want to take the survey. I'm tired of being asked if I'm happy. I work for Kittl. I don't need to take the survey. But if you click on one of the shapes that you've added to your project, it'll give you recommendations for other elements to add. And then you can just click them and then they get added to your project. Super helpful. I'll get rid of that guy for now. So I'm just gonna copy over my artboard. Best way that I like to do that is hold Option, click the artboard title or name, then drag it. I like to keep them aligned nice and tidy, so I just hold Shift so that it stays on a horizontal plane. So that's one way of doing it if you want to copy your artboard. You can also, there's this handy new Add New Artboard button that will just add another artboard directly next to yours, a blank, fresh artboard with nothing on it. So that's also super helpful because what I would have done is just copied this artboard and then selected everything and then delete it. But this actually makes that less actions by boop, just one button, click, new artboard, done. And you can just do this indefinitely. The great thing is that you can see that it tracks with the artboard and keeps it centered. So if you don't have a magic mouse or a trackpad or something, this is gonna be very, very useful. We've gotten some comments that it can be difficult to navigate the endless canvas without something like a trackpad or a mouse that you can just go like this on. That'll be super helpful for that. So I'm gonna keep this super simple. This is just gonna be text and the shape. I don't super love just stark, clean, cold white. So I typically like to bring it a couple shades down and make it like a nice off-white, or you could go a tinge to the yellow side, and that's nice. And it makes it feel more warm and inviting, less cold and digital. Now I'm really digging this orange. I really like this orange thing. Another cool thing with these shapes is that if you were like, oh, I love this one and I love the way that it swoops in like that, I just wish it was a different color. Well, you can just make it a different color. If you go to the photo filter, you can play with the hue slider, and that looks sick. I've gone from this blue cyan color to kind of like a magenta and peach very, very easily. So for this one, I like the idea of utilizing that feathered edge to kind of fall over some text. And I'm just gonna copy this text over because I like this font. This is just Manrope medium, and I've closed the kerning or the letter spacing a little bit, and then really closed that line spacing. Just a general open line spacing when you create a new text box is pretty far apart, and that's gonna be like a lot of programs. But I like to close that line height together just to make things nice and tidy. So I need to think of some text to put here. Just put something random. Feed your mind, soul. And if I bring this font size down to get it to be two lines, let's see how big we can make it. That's very nice. And then I'm just gonna bring this down. I like when there's the same space up top above the text box as there is on the side. That's gonna create a really nice border. So if I put this up here, you could look at that and be like, there's something about that I don't like. And sometimes that does work. If you were gonna do this, and it was purposeful for it to be at the edge, that's fine. But generally speaking, in most cases, you're gonna want a nice margin around your edges. So you don't have to get the rulers out or anything. You can kind of eye left and right. Okay, there's this much space between the edge of the text box to the right or left of the artboard, and I'm gonna try to mimic that. And you can also just look at the frame of your text box here and make sure that's centered up. And I can take this guy and bring it to the front, and you can see how that shape is starting to bleed over on top of the text, which is super cool. And I might actually play with the positioning of this to see what I like the most. It's gonna look different at every angle. And I like something like that, to where it clearly is very obvious that it's on top of the text and it has that feathered, blurred edge. And I like this positioning just because it's very plainly obvious that it's on top of the text and it has that feathered edge, but the text is also blatantly and obviously readable. So there's not gonna be any complaints of, oh, we can't read the text because you got your daggone gradient shape on top. Well, you can obviously see that says feed your mind, soul, and then I'm gonna complete the phrase down here. And this might actually need comma. And that's slightly frustrating to me because I don't always like using proper grammar because it throws off the balance of the text box.
No! You threw off my groove!
But I guess you have to do it. You have to make some sacrifices, right? And we could go down here and say, and body. That's pretty cool. We'll just make sure that this is on the front. And if we wanted to, we can make this a little bigger and have that start to bleed on top. We could also squish this a little bit so that it doesn't get too wide. So to kind of warp the box, you can also hold shift, and that's gonna allow you to kind of warp the shape as well. Let's see. Something like that I feel fills the space really well. This can become one of those things where it's like the longer you look at it, it feels difficult to make it feel balanced. So I would kind of trust your gut on this. And then I think some sort of little text box right here would be cool. I'm just gonna copy this same text, make it a lot smaller, bring it over here. Then I can make this something pertains to the overall theme, like see, breath, prayer, and clean food. And then it is cool to try to layer this, right? So we've got the text going underneath this gradient, but then we can have text on top of that, and then it's gonna really give us that 3D effect and feel. And this just makes it nice and balanced. I'm gonna try to make sure that there's about as much space between this text box and this one, and then up here as well. So this is not centered, right? Because if I centered it, it would be right there, and that doesn't feel awful, but it doesn't fill this vertical space like that does, right? So try to think about optical balance sometimes over actual physical true center. All right, I think I have time for one more. We're gonna copy this over. I'm gonna get rid of these text boxes and that shape, and I'm gonna drag in this awesome shape that we changed the color of here. And what would happen if we made the artboard a dark color? Pretty cool. In the same way that I don't like true white, I don't like true black either. I like to make it a slight off black. It just feels better to my eyes. And then obviously we're gonna come in here and change the color of the text. We could probably make it that nice off-white color that we did for the back of this one. And I want to try and see if I can make just text go down the whole thing and then see how readable it is with that shape in front of it. Let's see if I up the text. We could duplicate this. We want to make sure that obviously we add some sort of variation in here. So we could duplicate the object and then make it smaller. The key here is to cover up the text just enough to be able to tell that it's covered up, but not so much that you can't obviously read what's going on. I think I like the placement of that, and then we'll make this guy a little bit smaller. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And it's kind of mirrored, like it kind of has like an infinity type pattern to it. So that's pretty cool. So go ahead and try this trend for yourself. It's super, super easy once you get the hang of it. Just use some clean type or a nice serif or script, whatever your kind of favored font is. Try to make it more on the minimal side, don't make it too busy, and just play around with these different gradient shapes, play around with different background colors, and remember that you can use the hue slider in the photo filters to change the color of these shapes if you find the shape that you're like, oh, that's perfect compositionally, and I love the way that it's shaped and it interacts with the text, but I just wish it was whatever color. Just use the hue slider to get it as close as you can. Well, that is all for today's video. I hope that this was super helpful, and go try this trend. Make sure to hit that like button and comment down below what else you want to see here on the channel. And if this was helpful, just let us know down in the comments. Make sure to also subscribe so you don't miss anything, and we will see you in the next video.